So good morning. Thanks for taking the time to get on this morning. It should be a relatively quick meeting this morning. Have a couple items to review, the conflict of interest form, and then just talk about how we will proceed when we start reviewing the RFPs, and also an update from Sunflower. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, and I'm going to go down the list here just for Connie's benefit. So if you can say here, I guess if you're here, Sandra.
I'm here.
Let's see, Robin, Gary, Lori, Monica,
Here.
Sarah,
Present.
Mike Brower,
Here.
Mike Kagi, I think Mike, I see he's on. And let's see, Keith.
Here.
We have a quorum. With that being said, the board minutes from our last meeting were sent out and would entertain a motion for approval.
Sarah Kaler moves.
And
This is Sandra, a second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approval? Aye.
Aye.
All against, same sign. Okay, unanimous approval. Let's see, it looks like the committee room, the video is not turned on.
He's working on it, Pat.
Okay.
You want to know who's in here?
Yeah, who's in there?
Okay. We've got Chris, Robert, and Nancy from the OAG office. We've got Connie and I, and then we have Brandon and Shanna with Sunflower, and Stuart Little in the audience.
Okay.
And Sarah, of course, but you knew that.
There. Now we can see your pretty and handsome faces. So, well, we will go right into the update from the Attorney General's office. Chris, you want to bring us up to date on anything that you have, maybe balances or what you've been working on?
Sure thing, Pat. No new distributions to the state in the last month, although we do anticipate the next Johnson & Johnson payment will come in over the next month. That payment will be in the neighborhood of about $200,000, as that, if you recall, Johnson & Johnson accelerated their payments in the first payment, so the next couple will be much smaller until we get a little deeper into the settlement process. I do have also some good news to share, although a press release hasn't been issued just yet. We anticipate one over the next day or two. But we can share that Teva, Allergan, CVS, and Walgreens have all agreed to go forward with the national settlements. So that means we anticipated this happening. This was the next step in that process. So that means we're going forward with all of those settlements. We will be in the AG's office working to get some final paperwork on file so that we can then get the payments from those settlements. I wouldn't anticipate money flowing from those settlements until at the earliest the start of Q4 of this year. I could anticipate it taking a little longer than that, but that money will start flowing soon. The only other thing that I have from the OAG, other than what Robert will talk about, is if you have not submitted a picture for your bio, we would love to have one of those so that we can add that to the website as well. I think we have all of the bios now, but we would like to get a couple pictures from the handful of people who have not submitted one. Pat, I think that includes you. I don't think we asked you for one previously, but if you wouldn't mind sending a headshot so we can put that on the website, we would appreciate it. I think that's all I've got.
I've been looking for one that had been touched up a little bit, so I haven't found that yet, but I'll work on it. Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Thanks for the update and good news. We'll go right to Robert. I know Robert's been working on a conflict of interest statement for us, and he produced that, and Connie sent it out earlier in the week. And I'll just turn it over to you, Robert, to maybe skim through what you've prepared and what you would like for us to do.
Sure. What I put together is both kind of a confidentiality policy and a conflict of interest policy for the board. There's nothing, groundbreaking about it. It mostly just sets expectations for board members to keep information confidential when they have it, and to report in advance when they know conflicts of interest with respect to applicants for grants that the board will produce, and creates a mechanism for the board to be able to deal with those conflicts of interest simply by deciding on what restrictions should apply to a particularly conflicted board member without creating a situation where the board member wouldn't be able to continue to serve in some capacity. So that's the main goal of the what I put together is those two ends, confidentiality and conflicts of interest. My goal would be to have the board members review this over the next month and potentially vote on the policy to adopt it at the next meeting. Since I only got it out to Connie this week to share, I didn't want to rush anyone into it. But you can look over it. Feel free to email me individually any questions you might have about it. And we can talk about it substantively next time. I'm happy to answer questions now as well.
Questions of Robert?
Yes, this is Keith. I was reading the statement, and since we're subject to the Open Meetings Act, I'm wondering what kinds of confidential information we might have that we couldn't share. I'm just a little confused by that.
Well, so I mean, the applicants may be submitting all sorts of information, and while grant applications are under consideration, if they're not yet funded, they may not be open to immediate core release. But this is also a practice for individual board members. Individual board members aren't going to release information subject to core anyway. That would need to go through Chris and myself. So this is a way for you to operate to keep information protected and not release information that applicants have shared with us. Where CORA applies, we'll deal with that side.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Monica. Pat.
Yes.
Robert, I'm sure all of us on here are involved in multiple boards as volunteers or, have connections to folks that might apply. If we just list those boards that we're on as volunteers or employment on the confidentiality disclosure, in your opinion, is that what we need to do, or do you need to do more?
Talked with, at the last meeting with Sunflower, about the possibility of getting lists ahead of time of what groups may present a conflict down the road. And I think we agreed that would be very useful as a separate item. But it's also possible that new potential conflicts could arise. We've already seen instances where people are forming new entities just to be able to pursue opportunities with this board. So while that would be a good idea up front, and we'll coordinate that with Sunflower, having the policy going forward, I think, would still be of great utility to both the board and its members.
Yeah. So right now, I'm sorry, I still don't understand what you want me to do. I know I need to just review the policy right now, but is the issue of, I'm sorry, would you just?
Yeah, sure.
say
So
that
there's.
again? It didn't sink
policy-
in what you want me to do.
Sure. So the policy itself, I would like everyone to review, and if the board adopts it, everyone would need to individually sign a policy. That's just setting forth what's going to happen. The policy creates an expectation of when you're aware of a conflict in advance of letting the board know that there's a conflict, specifically letting the chair know. And the board can address what to do specifically with that. What we can
I see.
also
So
do.
individually, we would let the chair know.
Yes.
And then handle each thing as it comes up.
Yes, and what we can do, if we get a list, and this is what we had talked about with Sunflower, if we get a list ahead of time of likely conflicts, we can work with Sunflower to preemptively screen that information from getting to you, so that you're not seeing information that's from a conflicted party. But the board would still need to make a decision under the policy as to specifically restrict a conflicted board member from being engaged in discussion or votes on a particular grant application.
Okay, thanks for restating that. It just didn't sink in the first time.
Sure thing.
Other questions? But it seems very straightforward, both the confidentiality and the form and the conflict of interest. And we will review that as individuals. And I assume, Robert, if I'm comfortable with what you've prepared, I should sign it and get that to Connie?
Don't sign it until it's been adopted as policy by the board.
Oh, okay.
And that way I'll also produce a copy that doesn't have draft watermarked on it. But we can do that adoption next month and just set an expectation to have the signed copies submitted, and they can be, scanned and sent as PDFs, and have them in before the August meeting when we'll actually start doing application review.
Okay. Any questions of Chris or Robert?
Krista just let me know that application materials are going to be out before then. So if folks want to start putting together lists of likely conflicts, like Monica mentioned, and send those to Connie, that would be great. We can start doing that screening before the policy itself is in place, because that screening process will be useful no matter what that particular policy looks like.
This is Sarah. Is there, and I am all for us having extra time to actually review this form. However, if there is no major concern, it's possible that we could approve it today.
That is up to the chair and the board, certainly.
I have no problem in doing that. Anybody else have an opinion? Anybody need time? I mean, we don't need to rush into it, but we don't need to prolong it either.
I'm comfortable.
This is Sandra. I'm fine with that too.
Well, I would entertain a motion to pass the conflict of interest agreement that has been produced.
Move to
Sarah.
pass it.
I'll second that, Sarah Kaler.
Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Robin, you just joined us?
Oh, about 10 minutes ago.
Okay, so I just seen you pop up there, so you got to take place in the vote. So unanimous adoption of the conflict of interest and confidentiality agreement that Robert has prepared. So Robert, you'll get out a approved agreement to us, and then we can sign it and get it back in. If members could get that back in here before the next meeting, that'd be great, or can send it in at the next meeting.
I'll get a clean copy to Connie to send out shortly.
Perfect. Thank you.
This is Sarah. As just a procedural question, do you want us to print that out, sign it, and then scan it back, or do you want an electronic signature? What are you looking for on that, just to make sure?
I'm comfortable either way.
Very good. Well, we will move on to item 4, and this is the financial update from Shauna. And we'll just turn it over to her. I think we were emailed the financials earlier this week as well for purview. So open it up to the update from Sunflower.
Am I good? I get red or nothing? You're good? Everyone hear me? Thank you.
Yes.
Shanna Zimmer here, CFO with Sunflower Foundation. And just want to take a moment this morning to thank you again for your time. to share some appreciation for our relationship and our partnership in this journey. Just a reminder, we do serve in the administrative support role for grant monitoring, compliance, and per the MOU, we ensure that we create efficient grant-making processes and activities that support you. Not only for due diligence on the grant review side, but also due diligence on our side in creating an efficient grant-making process. I did include an invoice in the packet today, so I'll draw your attention there. This is an invoice for our services for the first quarter of 2023, $65,740.65. Per the invoice, this is for direct salaries, benefits, a small portion of training, supplies, and the grants management system. Again, that system is called Flex. Part of the tasks that we completed in the first quarter were focused around the build of Flex, the program and the system side, the testing. We looked at system configuration, fields, the coding. We impersonated the grantees. We defined roles. We created the board access portal. We monitored scheduling deadlines. We're working on reporting, mostly focused around the pre-award phase. We are also focused on optimizing communication and compliance along the way. The one item that changed this month, this quarter more specifically, we did bring in an outside consultant to review the Flex management system. So we put it to the test. We put it through the ringer before the grantees even got in the system. We wanted to make sure that there was no negative feedback we couldn't fire at right away and make amendments as needed so that we could keep the grant making process moving. Again, I believe this is a grant that is needed, so I'm requesting a grant for our expenses that we've incurred first quarter of 2023, $65,740.65. And I would entertain any questions or comments about that.
Questions for Shanna? I'll just make the comment. I'm just very pleased with the work that Sunflower has done, and certainly has helped me in speaking on behalf of the committee going forward. Your professionalism is much appreciated, and just your vast amount of knowledge. Everyone that I've worked with at Sunflower certainly exceeded any expectations that I might have had. So thank you for that. And as far as the invoice, I believe, I'll look to Robert and Chris, believe we need to approve this invoice for payment or entertain that motion.
Yeah, it would be by motion to approve a grant for that amount.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll second it.
Need somebody to make it.
So moved.
So moved, sorry.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Unanimous approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for me?
All good, thank you. Okay, well, item 5, Krista will review our RFPs 1 and 2, and also the needs assessment update. Krista, we'll just turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. All right, so we can go to the next slide. That's just the intro slide. Some of this will be repeat from what you guys received last month, but I wanted to at least go over it since we didn't really go over it last time. So with the treatment RFP, the one that closed in April, our first RFP, we received 71 applications from 62 different organizations. Most of those were nonprofits. We covered all congressional districts and had multiple applications per congressional district, and then all priority areas, and every single strategy was also addressed, at least had 2 applications that would address those issues. So then the next slide, you'll see the actual map. So this breaks down how many applications we received from congressional district. And you'll see the blue area is District 1, where we had 48 applications. District 2, we had 35. District 13, we have 18. In District 4, we have 13. And some of those may overlap because of the counties, like Douglas County is both 1 and 2. So one application would be both congressional district because they cover both. So there might be some overlap there with those. And on the next slide, you'll see the county-wide coverage, and so kind of a heat map by how many applications we received that it proposes to address that county. Washington was the only one that wasn't specifically listed, but we do have 16 proposals that are statewide, so would still technically cover Washington at that point. They just weren't listed specifically of target counties and applications. And then on the next slide, you'll see the updates for the prevention RFP, the one that opened May 8th. We received 67 actual confirmation of intents, so the surveys that were submitted, but we actually, with emails of people reaching out as well, we've got up to 70. And then we also have 3 extras that have registered in our grants management system Flux that didn't do a confirmation of intent or didn't let me know. So I'm estimating about 73 applications if everyone applies. And that application closes on June 23rd. We had our first and second webinars in May. We had 32 attendees for the first one and 29 for the second one. And those recordings are still available for anyone to view afterwards or re-review if they were at the first one and they want a refresher. So on this next slide, I just wanted to, this was actually Brandon's idea, put all of the timelines on one timeline for RFP 1, RFP 2, and the needs assessment so that you guys could visually see how they align out. Ideally, all 3 are going to be awarded by November of this year, ideally October, depending on how long it takes to get agreements from prevention grantees. And then they would all wrap up around between September and November of 2024. So they'd all be on that same kind of timeline, including the needs assessment. And so you'll just see here, which Sarah called to our attention that the online version cut off some information. So you can see it all on the slide, and we can send you a different copy if you need to, because the virtual one that you guys received might have cut off all of the information underneath the first paragraphs, I guess, under each one of these. So you can see the prevention RFP is in blue, and that kind of has that timeline. The black is the treatment RFP timeline, and then the purple is the needs assessment. So with the needs assessment, our goal is to get the RFP finalized and released in July. We haven't had a hard date set just for that yet. But then we hope that we will make awards around the same time that we're making at the least the prevention awards. So September, October is where we would hope we would select a vendor and start moving forward with that so they can be on the same timeline as the grantees. Any questions? That's the last slide. Oh, board access to your portal, I forgot. We were planning on doing that once all of the applications are reviewed, and that deadline is the 12th. So sometime next week, we can probably open that portal, but we'll want your conflict of interest first before we assign you guys sign you up for the portal. But you'll receive those emails through your official KFA email from Kelly Mark and from the system to get that set up. But we'll navigate the conflicts of interest in getting those lists before we open that up. But you guys should get that a lot sooner than you can get our summary reports and whatnot. And then the treatment reviews are happening, and we have a reviewer consensus meeting where we'll all get together and talk about the scores and the applications and come up with one consensus score per application on the 19th and 20th. And then you guys will get summary reports at least 2 weeks before the before the August meeting. So end of July, you guys will have at least 2 weeks to see all of the summary reports we put together from the reviews, which will include all the scores and different ways to look at the data to be determined exactly what that looks like. But if you have specific indicators you want to make sure we include, let me know. And I'll open up to questions.
Question for Krista? I just have a comment. Again, just appreciate all the work that Krista has put in. These charts certainly lay it out in a very understandable and readable fashion. appreciate that. And again, just all the work behind the scenes. I know the board very much appreciates it. Everyone on the board has at least one full-time day job. So to have this partnership with Sunflower certainly, as we proceed, will help us produce a great product for Kansas and for the people that we want to help. So much appreciation to all of Sunflower and Krista and her leading the efforts and her producing these charts and other materials that make it easy to understand where we're at and where we're heading. So thank you for that. We will move on to item 6, and just a few things, as we've already talked about the open meeting and confidentiality, but also just wanted to chat a bit about when we get into reviewing the applications, and would look for some direction from Robert and Chris. As Robert mentioned earlier, the information until approved is not subject to KORA. So when we review these, in my estimation, we would be able to go into executive session to protect this information until approval time. But I'm stating that as a question to Robert, or if there's a better way to handle that, certainly open to that as well.
Yeah, so let me kind of pull at some of those threads there a little bit. So I would classify the applications as unfunded grants that wouldn't be subject to KORA as long as they have that status. The big exception under KORA to those particular documents being excluded is it's until they're mentioned in an open meeting. Once a particular document is cited in an open meeting, that makes it open to KORA. Now, as far as, so those documents, until they're referenced in an open meeting, I would say yes, are excludable from KORA. COMA sets very limited reasons that you can go into executive session. The two that could potentially apply to some parts of an application would be consultation with legal counsel on a conversation that would be considered privileged. So that can't be a coverall. We just want to have an attorney around to talk with and talk about whatever we want. It would need to be legal questions, which would require an attorney's advice. The other one would be discussing data related to financial affairs or trade secrets of corporations. That's very narrowly construed. So if there's particular financial data from some of the applicants that we don't want to disclose publicly, we could go into an executive session specifically to discuss that element. I don't think that there's a setup under COMA to have an executive session to broadly discuss the applications. The Kansas Fights Addictions Act didn't exclude any of the processes of the board from KORA or COMA, and the presumption in applying any of those laws is to construe heavily in favor of openness. So while I'd be willing to help tailor specific narrow executive sessions as needed, we would not be able to broadly use it as a tool to close off those part of the meetings.
To protect the applicants and protect, maybe not quite the right word, not to embarrass anybody, can I assume the applicants can be coded? Can we assign, a code as opposed to using their name as we discuss them?
Yes, with the caveat that the legend for that coding list would itself be subject to KORA. So someone could request a copy of the legend of the codes and have it, and when someone says applicant 6741, if they'd requested at a time, I don't know of a KORA exception that would allow that list to be held back. So while it would prevent names from being mentioned during the open meeting part, there would be a workaround for individuals who are particularly interested. And but we can certainly do that, and for by and large, that would, create for most viewers a certain anonymity until the proposals are actually approved. But, I mean, the bigger lesson there is also just taking care of being conscientious about what you say during an open meeting. If an application isn't a good application, you can note specific issues without being, disparaging or any kind of the reputational concerns folks have had about applicants that don't get approved before the board. So while we can set up some measures, the coding is not a bad idea, but again, it doesn't completely cover it. It's just more of an onus on the board and on us and the support roles to be careful what we say and how we say it.
Thanks, Robert. Krista, I should know this, but I don't or forgot. The RFPs included language that would let the applicants know that it was all subject to open records, etc.
Yep, that disclosure was in there, in the RFP document.
And the award letter, I think as presently drafted, reminds them of that again as well. So they get it at the beginning and end of that application process.
Okay. We have access to the portal as board members, as well as the reviewers. Those applications remain not subject until we bring them forward to the full board and have discussion. Is that correct, Robert?
Yeah, any citation or discussion of the document in an open meeting is what brings it back into Cora.
Okay.
Connie just asked if it had to
Krista
be
or
a meeting of the
others,
full board. And I just want to clarify, it's anything that would qualify as a meeting of the board. So that could even be, if there's not a quorum, but the board itself is sitting, that would still qualify as an open meeting. They just couldn't take any action without a quorum.
Any questions from the board or Krista or others from Sunflower?
Yeah, Pat, just really quick, Shannon reminded me, we also added into the grants management system upon submitting their application that they attest to knowing that it could be open to public records and whatnot as well. So that's a third measure so that they know about it.
Okay. Thank you. Sure, most of the board have worked around the Cora and open records, so I think we're fairly familiar. It's a little challenging, or can be, but again, heeding Robert's advice to make sure that when we're referring to specific applications, and we'll remind all of us before each meeting to measure our words as we are open for the public review. Any questions for Robert? Thanks, Robert. That was very thorough. I think I feel pretty much understand. And so we'll move on to 7, which is about at the end. We will be meeting on July 14th. At this point, we have reached out to a couple of national leaders in the area of coordination of care, some pioneers when it comes to the continuum of care, both with or all with SUD and mental health and physical health. And seems like even though we've talked about prevention for 50 years. It's getting more and more attention that this is really where we need to head, whether it's physical health. I think physical health is a little bit ahead. I see Robin nodding her head, but mental health is rapidly going there. And then just the coordination of the two of those, they're not two separate things. And so as I've expressed, and it seems like most of the board, as we go forward, we might be able to somehow make a difference in this area that would ultimately lead to saving lives and saving families and providing some outcomes from our service doing this. So would plan on us getting together. It's been a few months anyway that we've been together in person. So if at all possible on the 14th, and then to follow up to that in August and September. I think those will be full days as we review and award the grant. So we'll just, if possible, of course, if not, certainly can join via the internet. But that's kind of what we have up. I think Monica asked for an update on what's going on in the world of opioids and what they're seeing. We've reached out to a couple of different people that we know that are, on top of that. They are both tied up this particular Friday, so we will try to provide that as well next week, or not next week, next month. And again, if you have any thoughts of areas that we might look at, or people that we can call in to help us as we go forward, please submit those to Connie or myself, and we'll certainly do our best to honor that. So any comments, any thoughts from anybody? Well, thank you,
Monica. I feel like we're moving right along, and I appreciate that we go ahead and have a little short meeting and take care of some business, and feeling really connected and really appreciative of the information Sunflower's providing to us. So thanks, Pat, for your leadership on that.
Thanks, Monica. It's, I can get to feeling frustrated that we've been at this for a while, and we haven't started spending money. Not that I'm spend money for money's sake, but also just as an aside, I had someone from the administration reach out to me. He had been in a rural area, and this is not his, his agency doesn't cover it, but they have had a tremendous increase in suicides and overdoses. And he knew my background, and so was able hopefully to put together a group, because they don't know what to do. And I think doesn't have to be rural America, could be metro, when you run into just don't know what to do. And so hopefully can line up some resources for them. They see their young people dying, and I informed him of what we're doing with this board, and hopefully that'll be an area that we can have an impact on. So that kind of reminded me of why I'm doing this and why we're doing this, is to hopefully make a difference. And so, well, thank you all for your service. Thanks to the staff there. And
before we Chair George, yes, sorry. Before we adjourn, quick question, and this is further down the line. I was looking through my calendar, and I realized that our KFAB meeting in November is actually scheduled on Veterans Day. Is that something that we'd addressed and I'd forgotten about, or is that something that we need to address?
Yeah, probably would look to move that maybe a week sooner, a week after. Would be my suggestion. So why don't we, thanks Sarah for bringing that up, maybe next meeting, look at your calendars and see. I'm thinking what is, if somebody has a calendar, what actual day is the week before and the week after the Friday?
According to my calendar, it's the 3rd or the 17th. I have a conflict for the 17th, so I was trying to figure that out.
Okay. Seems, and that's getting close to Thanksgiving too, so we might look at the 3rd, if you can look at your calendars, and then we can decide between now and the next meeting if we'll move the November meeting to November the 3rd. Thanks, Sarah. Any other comments, questions? Krista, anything that we didn't cover, or you have any other comments?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, well, thank you. Have a wonderful day. I'm wondering if I'm in Kansas. We've been getting rain out here in western Kansas without wind. So hopefully I'm not jinxing that as we go forward. Well, thank you and have a wonderful day. And I bring the meeting to a close. We adjourn.
Bye, everyone.